from the Dallas On Air studios in beautiful Dallas, Texas. This is Fulfillment right here on DallasOnAir.com. And now here's your host, the Vega Bomber, PJ Dunn.
All right, welcome everyone to the show. This is Fulfillment. We are now looking at episode 9 of season 4. If this is your first time here, we'd like to go ahead and ask you to consider to go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like, and then share this with your friends. Because if you like movies, and if you like talking about movies, if you like analyzing the story, the plot, or talking about whether this character gave a great performance or whether they sucked, well, we're going to talk about elements of that here today. Wouldn't you say that's right, Kazak?
I would say so. That's a good idea.
Sometimes you just have to say it. Yep. So if you were watching, what we have started and embarked on is this whole segment called Then and Now. Well, first we started off looking at directors saying, hey, what was their first film? And then what was their latest film? And then we just kind of talked about how they went from their first to their last or their most current to see, hey, how are they getting along better? Are they kind of plateauing, or did they get worse from the first one? And was their first film really all of that in the first place? So today, as a topic, what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about screenwriters. So we did directors before, now we're going to talk about screenwriters then and now. And this is a pretty interesting case, right, Kazak? Because sometimes these folks are not, the screenwriter and the director and the producer are all one and the same.
Exactly. I know that a lot of that is what I'm going to hit today on for sure. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So if you're here for the first time, what we do is our first segment we jump into is called Just Seen It. And with Just Seen It, what we're going to do is just kind of tell you what we've been watching here lately. So that way you get a sense of what we kind of pay attention to, what we've been watching, maybe what we haven't been watching. But either way, you'll know what our taste is about because it's the kind of thing that we're looking for. So Just Seen It, and that's the wiki. And so I'll start off, Zach, just to get us rolling here.
Okay.
I saw a Michael Bay film.
Oh,
yes.
I'm sorry for your loss.
Yes. That loss of 2 hours and 18 minutes, something like that. Yeah, this was a movie called Ambulance, and it was starring Jake Gyllenhaal, Yahya Abdul-Mateen, and Eliza Gonzalez. So Jake Gyllenhaal is Mysterio, and Yahya Abdul-Mateen is the villain in Aquaman. So it's kind of interesting, two villains, one from Marvel, one from DC, starring in a film. And, of course, the great Eliza Gonzalez, who's starting to show up a lot more. So this film, Ambulance, is what you would expect. So if you're a Michael Bay fan, yes, this is intense. Yes, it's beautifully shot action. Yes, you might start questioning the reality of whether this could happen and that could happen. But, hey, as long as stuff blows up and trucks flip over and, you get these wonderful camera angles, who cares?
Exactly.
So Ambulance, I would say, is this. This is a movie, I would say, it's not bad. I could tell you that if there's nothing in the theater right now to watch, and there really isn't after you've seen a couple of these, then this is a film that, you just kind of go into just saying, hey, I just need the adrenaline rush, because that's exactly what Ambulance is. It's 2 hours, just over 2 hours, and it's just nothing but just a long chase scene of the police and the SWAT teams trying to chase down this ambulance, which has our two stars in it, with a cop that has been shot by one of them. And so it does try to do some interesting things. It plays along with the whole idea of, yeah, maybe you shot someone, but you did it for a bad reason. But really, then you realize in the middle of the heist, it's not too late, and you try to shift and try to see if you can save the guy that you shot. So I like the idea that that's there, but Michael Bay's just not the guy to do that.
No, it's not, and it's not that his films are necessarily about redemption. It's just basically, let's blow stuff up around these people and see what happens. Mm-hmm. And that's fine for some moviegoers. It's not necessarily my cup of tea. But not that I have anything against blow 'em up films, because sometimes you just need that mindless popcorn action.
Sure.
And Michael Bay certainly fills that void for a lot of folks. I'm one who kind of needs a little more intelligent dialogue and well thought out crafted performances, and a script where every third page is and then blank blows up.
Yeah.
So
Right.
just I need a little more.
Yes.
A little meat on the bone. But like I said, if you don't want meat on the bone, you just want to go in and see something blow up. Well, maybe this is for you.
This is it. Like if you like that long chase in Ryan Johnson's second installment in the sequel trilogy, where they were just trying to chase them from behind forever, going slow. Well, you got the fast version of this because that ambulance is going pretty fast, and they're just following it, and they can't blow it up and shoot up because one of their own is in it, right? They don't want to kill one of their own that's in there, so there's a reason. And so there's just a bunch of ideas of, well, why haven't they done this by now? Wouldn't that ambulance have run out of gas by now? It's not the greatest in gas. I mean, you just start asking this because it just seems like once it gets into that ambulance, it goes forever, and you're just like, come on now. But in the beginning, I'll say I'll give the opening a lot of credit. It rivals the bank heist scene in Heat. It really does in terms of how it's shot, and the cinematography and the sound I thought was really good, and just the idea how calm they were. And Jake Gyllenhaal sells it as just a master bank robber, just a master guy who knows how to boost things. He's super, super smart. So he has these ideas. He understands when the police come out, what they do, their radar scanners. He's listening in on their topics to hear what they're doing and how they handle situations. So there is some of that to that. But boy, once they get in that ambulance, and there is what seems like the whole rest of the movie,
the whole 2 hours,
you're just going, dang, I just can't suspend my belief any longer. Wait, it's getting heavy on shoulders. So that's what I've seen. What have you seen, Kazak?
Okay, so I am amongst those who's just about ready to give up my Netflix membership.
Oh,
Because there hadn't been a lot of great stuff on there. I'm just about there, so I got to kind of get in the stuff that I want to watch before I finally give it up. And one of those, this has been on my list forever. I've talked about it on the show, and I needed to kind of get to it. So I just sat down and watched it. And the film is called The Sparks Brothers. Now, The Sparks Brothers is a documentary by one of my favorite filmmakers we talked about last time, Edgar Wright. This is a passion project for him in the fact that this is a band that when he was growing up in England really fell in love with.
okay.
To kind of give you some context, this band has been around since 1971, so you've got 40 plus years of music making. You've got over 20 albums, 840 songs. And as you watch this, it's not just, one of those classic documentaries where, you cut in interviews with the band and you cut in the documentary footage and you talk to music makers, things like that. You're getting not only just the film footage and things like that, you're also getting not only a history of the band, but a history on how the band influenced people. Because what you're getting this is a band that I didn't know about. I picked up this film not because I'm a fan of the band, but because I'm a fan of the filmmaker. And but hearing the story and hearing how it affected the people's lives, you get to see how this band kind of intertwined themselves around the DNA of modern and electronic music. Because you've heard them, you just don't know you've heard them. They're one of these bands that got really, really big in Europe, but kind of had but they're an American band.
Okay.
I think they're a European band, but they're an American band. And you see how they influenced bands like Erasure and New Order and Nine Inch Nails, and then you get into the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and you get into a whole bunch of, just you see the influence of it on punk and electronics and how they, bringing in synthesizers and how they advance technology. And then you get to see them making videos and doing stuff live and things like that. And you see just how integral these guys are to the DNA of music. You're a fan of these guys, but you don't know you're a fan of these guys. And as Edgar Wright kind of rolls out this documentary, you see in different forms of media just how influential this band was. And they're not one of these bands, like the whole drug and addled, groupie history. They're just a band that's made interesting and weird music, and that's what they've done, for since 1971. And it's and again, it's one of these bands you don't know you like them until you hear them, and like, okay, I like these guys because I've heard them. And all these
Oh, yeah.
bands owe such a debt to them that you even don't know how much of a debt you owe to them. But I mean,
Wow.
everything from like Kraftwerk all the way down to Nine Inch Nails. It's a big deal seeing how influential this band is, and they're still performing.
Oh,
And
my gosh.
and it's amazing.
Kraftwerk?
Yeah.
I loved Kraftwerk.
So again, yeah, I mean they're doing they're doing stuff about computers before computers are even a thing.
Yeah.
So again, it's a really weird big deal. But again, these guys are touching music all the way through, and it's interesting to see the creative process, and it's interesting to see these guys come up, come down, come back up, come back down, all over the pantheon of music because they kept evolving their sound and because they just kept going and writing music because it was what they knew to do.
Wow.
And again, getting Edgar Wright behind the camera on this, focusing on the subjects that he likes, you get a visually interesting documentary. It's not just cut to film, cut to concert, cut to band. You're getting interviews from the fans, and you're getting weird animation, and you're getting all kinds of just weird visually arresting stuff, which is again what the band was, a visually arresting band.
Wow.
So you get involved in a really fun film, a really good documentary, and a good look at a band that's been around for so long that you didn't know you liked them until you hear, oh wait, I know these guys, I like them. That's it.
Wow.
So yeah.
That sounds pretty cool. I mean, I like those kind of, it's not a documentary, right? Or is it?
It is
It is a documentary. Okay, I want to
yeah,
make sure.
It's a documentary about an actual band.
Yeah, okay. So it's not that docu-series thing that they try to do. This is straight up
this
a
is
contained.
a 2.5 hour film about this band. That's been
Wow.
around for 50 years.
Wow. No, I totally appreciate that. Some of those bands that you mentioned, I always try to figure out what are people's inspirations coming from, because music is so influential. You'll take somebody who heard one thing and then they make their own thing out of it. So
Yep.
it sounds like these guys just were the pioneers that went way under the radar.
Yeah, pioneers that really, developed what it was to work with synthesizers and work with recording and things like that. And again, just a prolific songwriter who just keeps on pumping out song after song and, throwing it up and seeing what sticks. And a lot of it sticks. So, yeah.
Which is talent. That's a complete talent. I like those people who make it seem easy, although the complex is real. The process is extremely complicated.
Yeah, the lyrics are complex. The music is complex. And it's all just really influential and strange and weird. And, yeah, totally worth watching.
It's funny that you were watching that. I ended up watching some old Bjork concerts from the 90s when she first started, and just... Man, she never had the same band backing her up every time, and they were playing all kinds of crazy, weird instruments that, as I listened to it on the album, I never had any idea what these instruments look like. So yeah, I like strange and weird sometimes, and Bjork's probably key of that.
Yeah, then before you give up your Netflix membership, this is one you definitely need to check out.
Okay, yeah, I can get behind that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's dive into our topic du jour. And we wanted to look at our Then and Now feature once again, this time focusing on screenwriters. So before we dive right in, Kazak, in your mind, what are elements of a good script or screenplay?
Well, for me, it starts with sort of, for me, for it to be interesting to me, it's got to be interesting in dialogue. It's got to be, not... It's got to have that through line that kind of connects you to the characters. They don't necessarily need to be humanistic, but they need to be somewhat relatable.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be kind of, it's got to have its roots deep within, how to say it, kind of deep within being interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Be interesting. Don't waste my time. Don't waste my time on screen. When you get into a script and kind of dive into the writing, you really want it to connect to you, because if I'm gonna give you my time, I really need you to write me something that's gonna be worth watching.
Yes.
I want the dialogue to be interesting. I want the screenplay to play out something that is going to keep my mind. That doesn't necessarily need fancy visual editing to make it happen. I want it to be rich in in story and plot and just be interesting. That's the one thing, is that I can't have a script that's boring.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would agree with that. I think as I look at it, the great components, you know, I need to know that the character is lived in, right?
Yeah.
He has to be something, the character has to be something I can connect with. There has to be some moment where even the characters, they going through the journey, they just get the world turned upside down on them. Because I think I'm a fan of just seeing, how do people win. I like watching how people win. I also think that, you know, just there's a way to write dialogue where you don't have to say it in just the most obvious of terms.
Yeah.
It could be written in some witty dialogue where you get the sense of, oh, he's upset about his wife cheating on him, but he didn't just come out and go, hey, you cheated on me.
Yeah, and it's not just about winning; it's also about losing. It's about,
yes,
like I said, for me, being able to get behind the smartest guy in the room and appreciating that for what it is.
Yeah,
yeah. It's about the lesson, and it's about what you as an author are giving to me as your audience, what you're sacrificing, how you're sacrificing it, how you're kind of either improving my understanding of the circumstances or improving my understanding of behavior.
Yes.
And that's a really big thing. Context is absolutely key in a good script.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I think being able to write the great setting that it's set in, which gives you all of that context too in a certain way. And I feel like if you can just do that and not rely on just the visuals, films, when they do that, you already know what it's like. It's going to be a video game. It's going to be play like a video game. And not that video games have to be bad. They have their place. But it's just like, when I go see a movie, though, you got to tell me a universal story that I can connect to, and then show me what's the ups and the downs of it, and then what does this person eventually do? Where do they eventually go because of what they just went through?
And get me behind why they need to be there, why they're getting into the circumstance, and, explaining it plausibly.
Yes, I think that is 100%. So with that, let's dive into some of what we have now. Is we're going to go ahead, for you audience, we're going to let you know about our 3 that we've picked in terms of screenwriters, which, again, some of them are also producers and directors. But we're going to look at their screenplays and see, how did they go from there to now? And so with that, I guess I'll go ahead and kick this one off. Okay. This was hard, for sure, to just pick 3. But I'm going to start with, it was my 3rd one, and go work my way up. So I started with Stanley Kubrick. This was very interesting. So what I did as criteria is I didn't take just the short film. So there's some short films that he did before this particular movie I'm going to talk about. Yeah. And there were some films that he directed but didn't write. So I picked The Killing from 1956. And so again, what is Stanley Kubrick known for? He's known for attention to detail. Oh my gosh. And then he's also known as Hollywood's most notorious perfectionist. Just ask Shelley Duvall what he put her through because of what he wanted to have. So in The Killing, just briefly, you get this great story of this career criminal who's trying to recruit this sharpshooter guy because he's building this plan, and he gets involved with a crooked police officer as well, and a bartender of all things. And what they're going to do is they're going to do one last hit job, which almost sounds like ambulance already, right? But what happens is that the main guy, Johnny Clay, is wanting to just go straight because he's got a fiance and he just wants to get the money that he's going to need so they can be set for the rest of their life. However, one of the other guys, George, tells his wife about this score, what he's going to do to finally bring their ship in. Well, his wife decides to create her own little plan of what they can do in her own little plot to get some money out of the people that they're already trying to steal from, that they're stealing with. So, again, you can imagine with Stanley Kubrick again, only he could pull off something like this, right, where you're having the double cross inside the double cross, but then keep the characters in a place where you say, no, that's believable. I can believe that they wouldn't know that this was going on. Or that he doesn't oversell it, like there's not any overacting in this film. So that was his directorial part coming out. But in terms of script and the screenwriting, oh my gosh. Again, I just hadn't thought of the idea of someone running a double cross. We get the idea of someone wanting to get married and then they want to do this last thing before they because they want to straighten up. But what about the people that you're working with? What if they don't want to be straight?
Right.
What if for them this is a job that they don't see this as being the last job? They see this as sustainable. Let's keep going. And so you can imagine the tension that shows up there. So this film won several awards. I don't think there's too many of his films where he didn't get nominated at the minimum for stuff. But you're talking about a guy who, again, has a diverse plethora, if you will, a diverse plethora of different types of films. So he's going to give you this film, which you get like this heist deal going on. But then you're going to get something later on with Kirk Douglas in it called Paths of Glory, which is completely not that. Then you get Spartacus, right? You get Lolita, you get a space odyssey, you get a space film, right? And he just continues, A Clockwork Orange, right? I mean, none of these are him just mailing it in and doing a formula of the same thing.
Right.
This is him pushing the bounds and saying, what about a character that struggles with this set in this setting? What about this? What about this? Right? And then all the way to his last film. So that was in the beginning, already showing this eye, already being very intense about perfection and needing things to be exactly so. There's tons of stories that you can look up, right? And then you see that he does Eyes Wide Shut, right? 1999. He dies of a heart attack after they wrapped up most of the filming and all that. And the film comes out and he's now taking on a completely different topic. What happens when this successful doctor and his wife in high society want to explore these other desires that they have? A lot of it around sex and infidelity and all these different things. Again, probably one of his most optimistic movies, crazy enough, as it was. But he ends up winning the award here posthumously for this. And I didn't know where to go with this because you had The Shining, you had A Clockwork Orange, and then you get this film. With Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, by the way. So they were married at the time. So it actually worked out that chemistry, you could buy the vulnerability of, hey, he doesn't really look at her. Right? I mean, in the beginning scene, he can't find his wallet. And that's how he's letting him, hey, this guy can't even find his wallet. Let alone, do you think he really pays attention to his wife, even though she's stunning? And so there's all these little, the ironies of the title, Eyes Wide Shut. I want to take on something, but at the same time, I know I should look away and do something different. So it plays with that whole vulnerability of the desire and whether you should play out this thing. And I don't know. Did you ever see this one by chance?
I've not seen Eyes Wide Shut. It's just one of those that it's kind of like escaped me. But again, like I said, I can appreciate Kubrick for what he writes and the fact that he as a director has a really great sense of framing.
Yes.
Like when he writes that script, he knows how visually that's going to play out.
Yeah.
And that's a very big deal in the fact that he has a very, very clear idea of what's going to be on screen when it finally gets there. The other thing that he writes better than just about anyone is an underlying sense of menace. You take into account something like Hal from A Space Odyssey and the underlying menace of I can't do that, Captain. Then you get into shots of Jack Torrance, writing the novel, and then you see how it pays off later. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. You see that play out in just so many ways. You see A Clockwork Orange, and you see the menace underlying in Alex as you pull into him on that slow pan shot in him on the milk bar, and you see him pan out, and you see just what comes from that underlying tone. Kubrick's stuff is all about tone, and that's the beauty of it. Is that you're not only along the ride as someone listening to the dialogue and watching it play out, but also you really get drawn in because he knows exactly how to pull you in.
Yeah.
And whether that kind of pushes you away and gives you revulsion or gives you like really intent listening, it's a really great measure of what he is as a filmmaker because of the way that he draws you in or pulls you out.
Yeah.
He really knows how to pull your strings as an audience member.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal when it comes to just the strength of Kubrick, both as screenwriter and director.
Yeah, and you know, one of the greatest thing about the screenwriter director thing is that you know you're getting the most pure unadulterated vision of the person because it's not someone else's screenplay. And you know, you hear all the time where directors and screenwriters kind of get into it because the director's like, "Well, I'll shoot whatever I want to shoot, and I don't need you to tell me in the screenplay." He pans back and looks at so and so's face when, right? They're just like, "No, I'm gonna do my." So when you see someone who's the director and the screenwriter, you know that you're getting a complete vision all the way through. And sometimes it can be bad if you're not very good, but in the camera in Stanley Kubrick's hands, it's a great thing, and even more so when he's the writer. So, for example, when I look at Eyes Wide Shut, I like how they're really trying to show you that Tom Cruise here, his character, is just that doctor. He's made money. He's done well. He's respected and beloved. But his wife feels so not paid attention to. She feels so abandoned, even though he's given her everything you could possibly want. And she's, you know, a badass in her own right. And all it takes is for her to just admit that one thing, which is she saw a man that she actually kind of had some sexual fantasies about real quick. It is a way to kind of shock him to say, dude, you need to wake up. Yeah, you've built a bunch of things, but you don't see me, but I need you to see me right now. And then he gets so obsessed that his wife could say something like that, but she's doing it to get attention. And then he decides, I'm going to try to figure out, you know, something about, you know, what can I learn about, since she wants to fantasize about having sexual encounter. I've never done that. I've always been work. So what do I do? And that's where Stanley Kubrick, to your point, kind of the horror side to it is just, oh, you meet this secret society that does some things after hours, and they're all about the sexual encounters. And what might it be to join that group? And it just starts because his wife says, you're not paying enough attention to me. Something as simple as that leads you down this whole, you know, thoroughfare of and pattern of just decisions he makes, small micro decisions he makes that he knows aren't right, that he's never done before, but he's indulging them. He's choosing to indulge.
So many rabbit holes.
Yes.
So many rabbit holes.
Yes. So with that, I just say that I love Stanley Kubrick's idea for just the perfectionism. Like, I always wonder what wouldn't have been in this shot if someone else would have shot this. And you know, Kubrick's going to put everything in the shot that belongs in that shot and then some.
Right. Yeah. Again, attention to detail. Such attention to what has to be on screen. What is the character thinking? What's the subplot? What's the context? All of it just so well thought out by the time it hits screen. And because he's such a perfectionist, he knows exactly what needs to be and where.
Oh.
You know, there's no cutting corners on this. It has to be that vision, and that's a big deal when it comes to director comes screenwriter.
Yeah, absolutely. And that movie ran for 2 hours and 39 minutes, and the talk behind the scenes was that he spent over 400 hours, they said, of just doing, or it was 400 days of just shooting certain scenes again until he wanted it perfectly. And then, of course, sadly enough, after they're done wrapping, he, at the age of 70, dies of a massive heart attack. You know, it's just amazing. Gone too soon for sure. Right. So who's somebody that you have on your list, Kazak?
Okay, so I know I talked about it last week, and it's fine because we're going to go back into it again. I am going to go ahead and start in with Quentin Tarantino. We start with, when we get a look at Tarantino's first work, his first screenplay that he really does something with is going to be True Romance. Now, True Romance when it started out was a script that he co-wrote. I can't remember his collaborator's name, but the script is originally 500 pages, and it's a script called Open Road. Mm-hmm. He eventually takes the script and breaks it in two. The first half becomes True Romance, and the second half becomes Natural Born Killers, because in the original script, the pair of Clarence and Alabama Worley split off and become serial killers. Mm-hmm. Because of the celebration of that. So Natural Born Killers goes to Oliver Stone, and Open Road / True Romance goes to Tony Scott. Uh, what you get is Tony Scott purchases the purchases the script for $50,000. He reads both the scripts for True Romance and Reservoir Dogs. Tony Scott says he wants to film both. Quentin says no, you can film one. He gives him the $50,000 for True Romance, and then Quentin Tarantino goes off and shoots Reservoir Dogs. So, getting into True Romance, what it is the story of Clarence and Alabama Wortley. This is Quentin Tarantino writing from where he starts from, because Quentin started as a video clerk, Clarence as a comic book store clerk. Clarence, Clarence for his birthday is given a date with he doesn't know this, of course, but he's given a date with an escort who watches a trilogy of Sonny Chiba films. Again, Quentin pulling from pop culture that he likes. Anyway, they wind up hooking up, wind up hitting it off, and they get married the very next day. From there, we find out Clarence goes off to retrieve her things from her pimp, and winds up not getting her things, but a large suitcase full of cocaine.
Oh my!
And so from there, we take that coke, and we basically run off to Hollywood to go ahead and sell the thing, because Clarence has connections in California that can get it sold. In the meantime, of course, we get visits to his dad, played by Dennis Hopper, and of course, when a large $50,000 worth of cocaine goes missing, well, someone's going to come after it, and that something is Christopher Walken. So Christopher Walken goes to first interrogate Dennis Hopper, and then he, of course, sends his goons off to California to go after Clarence in Alabama. What you get in this first script with True Romance is you get to kind of see where Tarantino starts, because not only are you getting some of the plot points that kind of develop into other things, because you'll get like little clips of it in Reservoir Dogs and other films, Natural Born Killers, etc. What you get is, first of all, again, like we were talking about with Kubrick, you first get conversations that drill down into menace, that really kind of have that underlying tone of violence. The second thing, of course, that you get is, of course, those pop culture references and things like that, where you're pulling from things that so to make them relatable to the audience. So, like, okay, I can pull it from this. You're also getting that love of a certain something. In this case, it's Elvis. And again, the whole film kind of has a little subplot where Clarence, has that swagger of of being Elvis, and thank you very much, etc. The Ghost of Elvis being played by Val Kilmer. Just again, there's a lot to pull from. So what you kind of get is the foundation of how Tarantino builds a screenplay, with those conversations that have an underlying tone of menace, like you see in Inglourious Bastards. You kind of get those kind of deep conversations about nothing, because you have a conversation at the top of True Romance where he's talking about Elvis. This has shades of the conversation in Reservoir Dogs where they're talking Madonna like a virgin. And of course you get violence, glorious violence all over the place. And Tony Scott really adapts this film into something incredibly and horribly violent. And it's visually glorious on screen. And True Romance is just one of those films that is just worth watching over and over again, because you start to pick up little things over and over again. You see, you get some introductory performances from Brad Pitt and James Gandolfini, and just get some great stuff. And so we kind of develop into Tarantino getting his kickstart, because again, he gets the reputation of being the Wonder Cannon. You get him, not only getting the True Romance script, but also taking that $50,000 shoot Reservoir Dogs and makes his own film. That's great. And again, you get Natural Born Killers, that other script, which again, you get to see him, you get to see the strength of him as the writer and the director. And so you get all those great films, and you get to see him take on, Jackie Brown, which is taking other people's material and adapting it into his own film. You get him taking, different genres. You know, the Nazi war film, like Inglourious Basterds.
Inglourious Basterds, yeah.
And of course, you get down to him doing historical kind of reinterpretations, and what you get,
Django.
right? Yeah, Django. You get him seen taking on the Western, The Hateful Eight, which is not necessarily a Western, but it's a murder mystery, and things like that. And finally, you get to his latest film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I just got my hardcover edition of the book. And what you get is him building a universe around characters that are interesting. Dialogue of people being vulnerable and people being, necessarily kind of washed up and things like that, kind of reaching the end of their road. Where you had in his first screenplays, The Strength of Youth and, getting into adventures and things like that. Now you're seeing writing where the characters are getting older, they're winding down. They've had so much they've seen, and they're finally kind of hitting their last run. So you're getting to see the age of Tarantino, the experience of Tarantino, embroiled into what he finally puts on screen. And again, it's basically saying, this is my version of Hollywood, and this is the Hollywood that I loved, and this is what you should see, because this is so cool. And that's what he always offers, is that he offers you something so cool on screen. And that's the glory of Tarantino.
Yeah. Oh, no. I mean, we could do a whole thing on just talking about Foxy Brown. We could talk about Pulp Fiction, which many people have, and to many degrees. But you're right that that when you get a Tarantino movie, especially in specifics to Inglourious Bastard and Django Unchained, and then I'd say Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's interesting to see someone else's take on something and how it could have played out.
Yeah.
Other than what we already know historically. And so that takes imagination to go and drive into that.
Yeah.
And then not contradict yourself by putting something in there that the characters wouldn't do. Right? Like, you really have to know the characters really well to make sure that, we can't make, Hitler like hip hop, or something like that if we knew that he was totally into Russian plays and whatever and blah, blah, blah. Right? Mm-hmm. So he's careful with it, even though he does extend it and takes it as far as he can. He's careful not to just go too crazy where you're just going, okay, dude, you're just spitting stuff out there.
Right. Wouldn't it? Yeah. Tarantino just goes, wouldn't it be cool if, and there we go.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly you get a theater shot up by the Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah.
And killing all. Watching Hitler die gloriously.
Yeah. The Nazis.
Yep.
With a T, right? So another screenwriter I ended up picking up on as I was looking at the list and trying to consider out of my favorite ones. I went with David Mamet for some different reasons, I guess. So when you think about David Mamet, this is a guy who is just known for taking and writing books and doing literary features, but then he knows how to take a book and adapt it to film. And that's another skill set altogether. Some people don't know how to adapt, a book into a screenplay that would then still work, but he's done this. And so when we look at his first work, once again, not all the short stories and all the other smaller stuff that he did, but in 1981, he did a remake of the 1946 film, The Postman Always Rings Twice, which he's using, he's got, this is what's so fun about this. He's got Jack Nicholson here at this stage of the game, who is going to go on later on and do some stuff with Stanley Kubrick. So we're seeing this growth of this Jack Nicholson character. But with this film, you're talking about, again, another gasp moment. So David Mamet talks about in his classes about how to write a screenplay. He says, if there's not a moment where the protagonist gasp at something, then what do you got? And I was like, wow, that's pretty deep. And so here you go, The Postman Rings Twice. You've got this guy who comes into this bar, and it's owned by a husband and wife. And as they get to talking, the wife and Jack Nicholson's character kind of start to hit it off in some ways. And then next thing you know, they explore the romance side of that this time coming in, and now they have to consider how they're going to get rid of the husband who is in the way now. And so you get this kind of gasp thing because you're like, Jack Nicholson's just eating up the scene, just like he's this wheeling dealing guy, kind of just comes in town, very freewheeling. And Cora, the one that's married to the restaurant owner, seems like this good woman. He's like, well, she wouldn't do something like that with some freewheeler just kind of coming in. But no, Dave Mamet challenges that. And so when you see this now, you start to go, wait a minute. Now that made me gasp because I was like, I didn't expect that it would just move to that kind of, it would go to that kind of direction that quickly and actually still make sense. That this would become the idea that now it's all about, okay, how do we take care of this person? How do we plan the perfect murder? Because she's not happy with the restaurant owner, although he's done what he's had to do to get them where they are. She would be happier with this guy she just met, this visitor who just happened to roll in town. So again, all of that, you're willing to put all of that on the line for something like this? You barely know this guy. So again, he takes this penchant for taking characters, put them in some spots, and you ask yourself, well, what would he do? And then he's known for just giving them very direct dialogue, and sometimes it's very terse dialogue. He's known for putting a lot of profanities in some of the dialogue just to kind of help get the point across, which some people might thought, well, that seems kind of gratuitous, but when you look at his style, he comes from Chicago, so he's used to a very hardened style of dialogue. And it shows up, and who else would play that other than Jack Nicholson? Somebody like him has that kind of ground to do something like that. So this is how he gets started. Now, interestingly enough, David Mamet actually becomes a Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright during the middle of all of this, while this is going on. And then there's so many books that he adapted and so many plays. And then he gets known for Glengarry Glen Ross, which was a play in 1983, but in the 80s, but became a movie in 1993. And again, that sharp dialogue, everybody knows, always be closing, ABC, and how rough Baldwin is when he comes in and just starts berating these salespeople, trying to get their sales up by just trashing them. You know, you think you deserve this? Go sit over there in the I can't sell anything line. I mean, just the different lines of this that people still quote, especially in sales to this very day. It's always very course. And I think when he was on Saturday Night Live, Alec Baldwin did the whole ABC, always be closing. This is where the closers get to sit. And so you see that. And then, of course, you go to the very, 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 very last outing for him in terms of something that he wrote. And this is kind of curious because he wrote the HBO film about Phil Spector, right? And this was really weird because in the very, very first of that film, he basically puts out this disclaimer that says, yeah, I'm kind of making crap up here. This isn't meant to be exact to what actually really happened in the case. But yeah, we're going to do it my way. And this is going to be fun because look at the way I envision how this whole thing went down with Phil Spector and then some of the actors and actresses that he worked with. So that's amazing that I mean, how many people would just tune out and go, what? You just made this up and you use it as a disclaimer? It must be bad then. But he actually used it to great effect. Right?
Yeah. I mean, Mamet knows how to write the viciousness of dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he knows exactly how to eviscerate a character. David Mamet has never suffered fools gladly,
yes.
Especially in his literature.
Oh boy!
I mean, if you were in theater at any point, you read something that Mamet's written. Of course, Glengarry Glen Ross. It's a not only exploration of what it means to be a salesman, but also just what it means to be a man. Period.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
And just all of it is just completely vicious. And then you get into stuff like Wag the Dog, where he's taking on politics, or you take a look at what he did with Thomas Harris's Hannibal, things like that. There's a lot that he gets into because he understands better than anyone how to put the viciousness of human nature on screen.
Yes.
And watching his stuff and watching his work, when you see it play out, it's really it's painful. And that and you it's not that you suffer as an audience member, but you suffer with those characters. And that's the beauty of David Mamet dialogue. Just that you understand what it means to be eviscerated by another human being, and he really kind of he really likes to put his characters through the grinder when he has to.
Oh, it's true. I mean, it goes back to that comment that he says about you have to make them gasp, and because he said that the comment was, he goes, any playwright can get people to applaud, right? They get up, they bow, they curtsy. He says, but you can't blackmail an audience into gasping. When a gasp happens, it's like, it's real. You can't make that happen. So he goes for that gut punch, that thing that's going to really just flip people and make them go, okay, I thought I was just watching a simple little tale and a story of some betrayal or some revenge or a highly flashy sales manager coming in to nail these guys in Wingberg and Ross, or he gets Pacino to play, in the Spectre film and be who he is in his bombastic. But I mean, he's right. That's when we think of it today as the gasp more as the twist, right? That where in the film is there this twist that you just didn't see coming?
And there is no more twist than Phil Spector, because holy cow!
Oh my gosh,
dude, that's a story in and of itself.
Yeah, and having Helen Mirren play the attorney in that film, that was incredible that she did that, and she actually had a real attorney named Baden that actually helped her understand how to move with how a case moves when you hear testimony that could be jumped on, it could be damning to the case. So, and he's going to put that in there because, again, he's making some of this stuff up about what happened in the court room, and he only used very little of courtroom testimony and got the real attorney for that film to just be kind of like a consultant. But if you know David Mamet and consultants, you can give me the idea how it goes, but I'm going to tell it the way I want to tell it. So that was David Mamet, folks. He has classes that he actually teaches on how to write plays. So if you're into that level where you really want to write compelling characters and you want to write situations that are above the normal that make people gasp, then you can actually go online right now on YouTube and take his master classes on it. And I think it'd be money well worth your time if you're really an aspiring screenplay writer. What else do you have, KZ?
All right. So, again, we go into the class of the early 90s because, again, we kind of draw from what we know. And I went into Kevin Smith for this next one. Kevin, Kevin starts out as a guy who just wants to make a film. He wants to make a film about what he knows, and what he knows is, what it means to be a long-suffering, low-cut member of the working class with no aspirations. But everything happens. But everything happens to you on one day, and what you get is the resulting Clerks.
Oh gosh, yes.
Clerks, when it comes out, gets an NC-17 rating just for the dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
They literally hired Alan Dershowitz. Miramax hires Alan Dershowitz to argue the MPAA's rating, and they finally got it to an R rating with no cuts, because there's no nudity, there's no real violence. It's just dirty. It's just dirty language, and it's a film based around Kevin Smith and his conversations with his friends. And of course, it's just the story of a clerk, played by Kevin O'Halloran, Dante Hicks, who has to come in on his day off, and everything happens on this one day. Dealing with the weirdness of the customers that come in, dealing with hey, I'm not supposed to be here today. You know where I'm supposed to be playing hockey, so he plays hockey on the roof, and you know that I don't think it's spoiling anything, but here a
Yeah.
customer dies, and what happens when that customer dies, and the romantic entanglements that he's in because he's between two women. Basically, he's writing a character that's at the center of his life and figures out what the hell do I do next,
Oh
and
yeah.
that's what comes out of Clerks.
Yeah.
Kevin is a writer that writes what he knows.
Mm-hmm.
And he also writes with a comic book sensibility because with the Askew universe, he's really kind of written an encompassing universe of characters, and has developed, their own plot lines and sublines, and there's comic book lines and things like that. He knows how to write for his audience, an audience of dedicated fanboys and things like that. And he writes just whip smart dialogue that are just conversations that you'd have with your friends. That you have that one friend who just has that quick wit, and just knows how to cut you so badly. And he writes the dedication of women and the frustration of them when they're just tired of your shit, and you see him develop into a screenwriter that goes into the depths of religion with Dogma, and he goes into the complex relationships like Chasing Amy.
Chasing Amy, yeah.
And as you can see him growing, into what it means to be a father, what it means to be, responsible filmmaker and things like that, we finally land up on Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, where in Reboot, Jay finds out that he has a kid and goes with her and develops a relationship with his daughter that he never knew he had. And in doing so, Kevin Smith casts his own daughter. Harley Quinn Smith is his character is Jay's daughter. And again, you get to see Rosencrantz and Guildenstern actually have to grow up and deal with the insanity and the consequences of actions, and of course, getting into dumb adventures all along the way. Yeah, Kevin writes dumb situations for his characters to get into, but writes the fun in getting out of them. But again, like I said, Kevin is not necessarily a great filmmaker, but Kevin is a great writer with a great sense of dialogue. He's very protective of his dialogue when he gets on screen, and when he gets his actors in there, he knows how he wants his dialogue created on screen, and he's very precise about it. And it shines through, and what you get is really just fun, interesting dialogue. And that's the strength of a Kevin Smith film, is that it's fun, interesting dialogue. The filmmaking isn't always great, but the writing always is. And even when you get into Tusk and Red State and the Hosers,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
not great films, not by any stretch of the imagination, but there are certain points where the writing gets interesting, and you can't necessarily hail it as great, but you can always find something interesting to listen to in a Kevin Smith film.
Yeah. No, I love it. I remember the first time I saw it, and shooting that in black and white at that time for sure was kind of a way to stand out too. And I love the dialogue because it seemed like lived in dialogue. It seems like something people would say once you set the context of this is who these characters are. They said things that they would say. Whereas today, people say things for commercials. They'll say some line in it so that it can be used in a commercial later and all that stuff. And I hate the way we just, conveyor belt build films today. Yep. This is just him raw, just doing stuff. Some stuff he does well, some stuff he doesn't, and he doesn't worry about the stuff he doesn't do well. He sticks with the things that he knows he can do, which is that dialogue and whatnot. I 100% agree with you on that. Yep. Well, my number one I really, really love, I could talk about this gentleman all day long. It's Taylor Sheridan. And Taylor Sheridan was a former actor. He was on the TV show Sons of Anarchy. He played on that. And that's what helped him understand that he did not want to do acting. He actually can't stand the acting. What he'd rather do instead is write screenplays, right? Because because the one thing that the TV series taught him was that he hated all the expositional dialogue. So he says in an interview one time that he's allergic to exposition, which I love that. And he got that from just TV shows. So he decides that what he likes is he just likes to say, just give me a basic plot. But what I'll do is, because it's a basic plot, you don't have to put a lot of headspace into it. let me show you what it's doing to the character if we start ginning up pieces to that plot. So it's a very interesting way to come into it. And he's not going to tell you, oh, look, the bad guy's walking in through the door. Instead, you'll see somebody who's waking up who's scared because you get the sense that they know a bad guy might be walking through the door and they're looking around, and he's showing you all of that without this long exposition. Here's Harry laying in bed because he was blah, 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 blah. So I love that. So in 2015, his first film was Sicario, and that is a masterpiece film. If people haven't seen Sicario, you need to go watch it. It's not just your basic drug cartel, American versus Mexican drug cartel and that borderline and how stuff gets over and gets back. You have Emily Blunt, who's in this. You have Josh Brolin. You have Benicio del Toro. And at some point, you almost don't know who the good guys are. Is it really the feds? Because they seem to be robbing from these particular drug dealers, but then you find out later on when Emily Blunt's character, who's new on the force and picked for her intelligence and everything else that she does well, she's confused about the people that are training her how to go in and take out drug dealers because they seem to use tactics that are not that far away from the drug dealers. So she's having this crisis of conscience of what, this is how he wrote this. And I'm like, yes, so the film is so great, and Benicio del Toro is excellent. And I won't spoil it for you, but when he goes in for that last drug dealer, because they had to use a drug dealer to get to this other drug dealer, which, you know, Emily Blunt's character didn't understand. She thought he was working with them. How could that be? And that last 15 minutes where he goes and he stalks that last kingpin drug dealer with his family. Oh, it's some of the best stuff I've ever seen. So he starts off with a bang. He gets a nomination for the screenplay on that. The next year he writes my favorite film that's in my favorite movies of all time. It's in the top 5, and that would be Hell or High Water. Once again, he shows off dialogue, like just with the waitress in the small Texas town talking to these Texas Rangers, how she's just not afraid of them. She's rougher than they are. And it's displayed in just this dialogue sitting at the table. And I loved this. I was like, this is great. It's funny, but she's gruffer than they are. And they even make jokes about how, man, nobody's ever going to rob that diner because she's so gruff about, well, what do you want? You either want a T-bone with corn on the cob or you want the potatoes. So I'm going to ask you again, what don't you want? And it's funny because he writes Huberman real well, because when the Texas Ranger goes, can I order an iced tea? It's great. So I love that. And so where does he land? Where does Taylor land? So he gets Yellowstone and all that, but the last movie that he did was one that he did with Angelina Jolie. And this one, once again, taking a simple plot line, but then twisting the crap out of it and helping us to see what is it like for Angelina Jolie to do what she's doing. So this movie was called
Those Who Wish Me Dead.
Those Who Wish Me Dead. So she's basically Angelina Jolie. She's a smoke jumper who finds this traumatized boy out there in this huge big forest fire that's going on that has these 2 assassins that are looking for this boy because he's connected to some important people. So think about that. A survival movie that becomes quickly dramatic, that talks about the life of Angelina Jolie. What would make somebody want to be a fire jumper in the first place? And then she meets somebody even more traumatized than she is, and they have to go work their way through this forest fire to get out of here before these assassins come and find her. See, again, a simple plot, but he twists that up, and it makes it interesting that because you want to see more. You're like, well, how would he elevate this, and how do they get out of here? And so at some points, the dialogue seems like it's not serving this major point, but what he's doing is he's saying, listen, I'm setting this next scene up with how she's reacting to this one, with her reaction, not necessarily just what she just said. So you're having to pay attention to the idea that sometimes when people are scared, they say things they don't mean because they're trying to put up a front, but he'll show you through their actions what they're really feeling. And he captures that better than almost anybody. That internal anguish that's going on the inside, you see it done well on the outside.
Yeah, I'm not terribly familiar with this guy. In fact, I got to profess, I'm not familiar with at all with his work. But looking at his stuff, looking at Sicario, looking at Those Who Wish Me Dead, looking at Yellowstone 1883, Hell or High Water,
Wind River, yeah.
It sounds to me, I think I see why you dig him, because he not only writes the character depth, and simple character plots and giving them complex situations, but also it sounds like he writes action better than just about any anyone on your list, because he knows how to line up those shots, and how to line up those circumstances, how to put someone in the wrong place at the wrong time perfectly.
Yeah, he does, and the actors that he gets. So when you think about Hell or High Water, I mean, you got Chris Pine, Ben Foster as these two brothers, and then you got Bridges and this other Indian actor, Native American actor, Gil something or other. I can't remember his last name. And the dialogue he writes for two Texas Rangers from different, ethnic backgrounds, and then these two sons, where one is smart and careful, and the other one is a wild hothead.
Mm-hmm.
And you have these two different sets, and they have to come together. And one of the main characters is Texas, right? The gun laws, the banking situations that went on in some of these cities that made some of these towns poor because of oil and stuff like that. And the fact that he weaves and woves that together, you're like, well, I'm rooting for the Texas Ranger because they're the good guys, but I also understand why Chris Pine and Ben Foster are doing what they're doing. And Ben Foster's just a hothead and making it worse, but you understand why the good son, played by Chris Pine, is trying to save his mother's land.
Right. It's not
because the banks are trying to F her.
Yeah, it's not necessarily about good guys and bad guys. It's where we all fall along those gray areas.
Yes.
That's a very, very. It's. I think it's hard for a screenwriter to actually write well, in the fact that you finally get the understanding and the motivations of characters.
Yes.
And things like that, and so you get into the depths of why these officers are doing what they're doing, why these bank robbers are doing what they're doing.
Yes.
You get fully developed character and character plots that move you along with the story, that move you as the audience member involved with the characters and involved with the plot, tying it all together. Maybe a simple story, but an understanding as to why you're in those circumstances. And that's a big deal when it comes to writing.
Yeah, I mean, there's just his choice of shooting. There's a scene there where in Hell or High Water where the brother has been shot, the older brother, the good brother, the one you want to see actually live because you understand why he's doing what he's doing. And there's this police line blocking the road, and he's got blood, and he's trying to hurry up and with his one good arm, trying to cover up so that they won't ask, hey, what's that blood coming from, right? So he's doing everything he can. That scene is so tense, and you lose your mind because as you see the officer walk up to the car, you're like, oh no, what's he doing? What's he doing? You can still see the blood. You can still see the shirt, and the new shirt the thing he tried to cover with soaked in blood, right? As he tried to, and you're going, oh crap, he's about to walk up on the car. He's about to walk up on the car, right? And that scene, and then when you see him see that something's wrong, and that officer starts to reach, put his hand next to his gun, letting him know, I know there was a bank robbery. I know there's a car heading this direction, right? They're not saying anything. You're just watching that. And I was so tense going, oh, no, please. And it's just a look, and he gives him, he looks at him, and he kind of looks at the truck. He's like, gone. And you're like, oh.
Yeah.
He had him dead to rights. But because he looked like, he put on that expression like, I'm just another Texan. I'm out here. I'm just trying to keep a ranch going. I'm just another guy. He gave him that look while trying to cover up the blood spot. And you just saw that look like, I get you, Texas boy. Keep going.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So anyway, if you haven't seen this, and then of course, I would say that Yellowstone picks up because it's about a ranch. So it picks up. So if you want a nouveau Western, that this is the way to do it. And I never thought I needed something like this. But with everything else out there being so formulaic in the way it's going, I need characters that are this interesting. And Taylor Sheridan, he's the man. And already, if you got Sicario, then you got Yellowstone on your belt, and you got Hell or High Water, and he's been nominated for both of those. He's got a great career, man, with just 4 films.
Yeah, and Westerns in and of themselves are, elementally easy to write. And again, since they've been around for years and years and years, it's hard not to write anything new under the sun. But it sounds like as though he's actually doing that,
Yeah.
and that's a big deal when it comes to screenwriting. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, in a world of cop TV shows and superheroes,
yep.
you need something different, and he provides, but it's actually pretty good. So, what's another one for you?
All right. So the last one on my list, I had to go with the Coen Brothers. Uh, we
Seriously?
well, of course I had to.
Yes. Well, they're listed as an influence for Taylor Sheridan.
Absolutely. Because and I'll talk a little bit of the influence because you start off with these two brothers who they're they want to make a film. They want to get a film made, and they start with the film. They start with a film called Blood Simple. Blood Simple is it's a film noir tale, again set in Texas. It is the story of a saloon owner who finds out that his wife is having an affair with one of his bartenders, and he hires a seedy detective to kill both his wife and her lover. And the seedy detective figures out, well, I can make my money by doing just one murder rather than two, and so he kills the saloon owner. And but he believes behind a key piece of evidence, and so when the wife comes back and sees or when the bartender comes back and sees the dead saloon owner, he figures that the wife has killed him, and he tries to cover up the body and protect the wife. But of course, when he's shot, he's not dead, and so there's the burial and things like that. And when the CD detective finds out that he left a key piece of evidence in the office, he goes back and winds up killing the bartender, and has to go after the wife. And you get this really intense kind of scene and the film noir twist and things like that. What you get is, again, a very simple tale, but what you get is a very, very complex telling of that tale. And when you get Joel and Ethan Coen going on this, you see the start of not necessarily a great film, but the great start of a film. Blood Simple kind of gets lost in the plot. You don't necessarily get sympathy for any of the characters and things like that, but you see elements of greatness as it starts, because you get, again, that underlying sense of menace, and you get two guys who really want to write film and make film, and they take a very simple plot, a murder plot amidst a Texas setting. And you get basically a Texas revenge story, and it's great. And
boy!
You get that great Carter Burwell script. You get M. Emmett Walsh, who is fantastic. The script is written specifically for this character actor, because they want him on screen, and of course to give him the role without even auditioning. And Emmett Walsh knocks it out of the park. The CD detective is just absolutely brilliant, on point, total menace. It's great. And of course, Joel and Ethan Coen go on to take those ideas, and they develop them into Raising Arizona and Fargo, and you see them take elements of screen on a script, and again know how they're going to play it out, just like I was talking about in Kubrick. They know exactly how to play it out, and then you see how they do it, and you watch like the great tracking shots in Raising Arizona, or you get those complex relationships in Fargo and things like that, and then you get on to them doing great expansive works like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, or you get really weird comedy with Intolerable Cruelty. You get great satires like Hail Caesar. You get weird mystery points like Barton Fink. You get just all such great stuff, all such great scripts with weird dialogue and strange camera angles and things like that. And it's a writer-director team who know exactly what they want on screen and how to get it. Um, where they land, again, they start after a while they start falling into let's make the western great again, and they get a great complex story like No Country for Old Men, and you get them take on. Finally, they land on the last project that they did together on screen, and that's the Battle of Buster Scruggs, which you can find on Netflix. Again, if you haven't watched it, you can pick it up before you cancel your subscription.
Gotcha.
What you get is a series of different Western vignettes that take on kind of walk them through the exercises of how they put together a story and put it on screen, because you've got a great tale of a prospector and with Tom Waits. You get a great country western ballad at the top with Buster Scruggs and Tim Blake Nelson, who you find from Oh Brother Where Art Thou, and you get that very, very sinister plot ride on a stagecoach and these mysterious people, and you get the story of a hanging, things like that, and you get all these great wonderful little western stories in this fun little 2-hour movie that runs the pantheon of every western that there is. And it's so great because it shows you the diversity and the depth of how these guys put together a film, taking it from page to screen and knowing exactly how they're going to get there with actors that they work with often and getting the most out of them. People like John Turturro and John Goodman and of course George Clooney, Tim Blake Nelson, just all these great character actors, and how to take those characters from a page to a screen. And it's just a masterclass in everything they do, every film, every single one of them. You learn something new, and you see a new film technique, or you see a new angle. It's again taking the simple stories but making them complex and beautiful, and that's the greatness of the Coen Brothers.
Absolutely. I mean, 100%. When I just think of No Country for Old Men, Brother Where Art Thou. Again, these are movies that when you sit down and you watch them, they command your attention. They're not. You're not going to just sit down and be doing a whole bunch of other things while it's on in the background. It's not one of those movies, because you will miss something.
Yeah, I mean, even the minimal stuff like The Man Who Wasn't There or A Serious Man, things like that. They're not necessarily, great films, but they're compelling films in and of themselves when you pay attention. And that's the thing, is that you pay attention to a Coen Brothers film. And when you even if you watch it 100 times, you'll pick up something new every time you watch it. I mean, I've watched Raising Arizona probably 100 times, and I pick up something new every time I watch it.
See? Wow. Well, I mean, who knew? So think about this, ladies and gentlemen. Just screenwriting, your ideas, your thoughts, when you put them down, and then you start imagining the context. Where is this scene set up? Who are the characters? What's the character about? Why does the character choose what they choose? What are they running from? What are they running towards? I mean, when you do that, you're talented when you're able to capture that, because writing is damn hard. I mean, it's extremely hard. Right? I have to write speeches a lot in what I do. And so if I don't get into an understanding of a formula in the audience and an understanding of where I'm trying to take them, that makes for nights of just tearing up paper, throwing it down and starting all over again, or just deleting, backing up, backspacing on your computer and just trying to put something else in. Because again, to David Mamet's point, what's going to make this audience grasp? Yeah. What's going to make them go, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. And now I got to see how this finishes. I got to find out how this ends. Yeah. I mean, so yes. So if you're going to write, if you're a writer, hey, I'm giving it all to you. And when you go to films now, don't just look at the visuals. The visuals are nice. That's a part of the storytelling. But see if you can pick out certain elements of how the actors are responding to the dialogue that they have to give, and then that dialogue.
Yeah. What makes you listen? What makes you watch? Pay attention to what makes you pay attention, and know that it's not only the director's vision putting it up there, but also it's the writing that goes behind it that drives that story, that's giving you that visual. It's very important to pay attention to actually pay attention to what you're hearing, what you're seeing.
Absolutely.
To someone to write that out and play that out, so a director knows how to put it on screen, how an actor knows how to convey those emotions and put together something that makes it compelling for you as an audience watcher, as an audience member.
Absolutely. At some point in time, you're going to be asked to entertain some people. And how would you do it? How would you entertain some guests that are coming over to your house? What stories might you tell them? Or are you just going to let them talk the whole time? You could do either one. But at some point, you're going to have to entertain. And if you entertain, where might you go? You got the whole sphere of what's going on to create whatever you want from whatever you want to create from, which is daunting in one aspect, but also liberating in another. So who are we shouting out to, man?
Well, of course, we do want to shout out everyone here on Dallas On Air. Of course, Jensen and Kat, who give us a home here every Sunday. And, of course, do check out all the great shows here on DallasOnAir.com. Do check out our counterpart, Cole Houston. We're going to be bringing you 2 shows next Sunday. We're going to bring you the Isle of Toys and the Rent Core Pit Live. And we're going to, talk collectibles and toys like that. And, of course, we're going to talk Star Wars. And, of course, do check out stuff like Figment, Explain the Streets podcast. Check out Fan in Life. Check out Say Something. Check out Best for Business. Check out all the great stuff here in DallasOnAir.com. I promise you, you will not be disappointed.
Yes, and I want to shout out to a bunch of film lovers who have been watching us and supporting us for the full 4 years we've been doing this. So Brandy and Barry Austin, Sean Presley, Lauren Wiedauer, Tristan Fraser, Harry Thomas, who's also a YouTuber, Prim's also a YouTuber, Troy Ross, Daniel May's a good friend, Freddie, yes, Freddie, Eddie Medina, of course, Cole Houston. They're also not only just fellow podcasters, but they're also good friends, Stephanie Crane, and, of course, the film samurai himself. And I also want to give a shout out to our correspondent to the show, Horror Mike. So we're going to get him back up. We got some more ideas to talk about to bring him back in. So he seems to be a fan favorite, and we'd like to have him on. So
cool.
All right. Well, with that, y'all have fun. You go out there, make it fun. If you're going to write something, write something. If you're going to speak something, speak something. If you're going to act something. But as long as it's related to movies and movie fun, well, we'll talk about it.
Make the damn movie.
That's right. Make that movie. And we're out of here. Pieces.
Deuces.